Now let's see one classic example of input data validation. So this is the scenario we have. Let's say in our program, we want to read the age from the user by using input function. So now age can't be negative, right? So what we want to do is if the user enters negative age, we want to print some message like, let's say, hey user, age should not be negative, and we want the user to re-enter the correct value. So how can we do it? As we have seen in the previous video, we can implement while loops using two kinds of syntax, right? First is by using this while true plus break, which is an infinite loop syntax. The second one is by simple while condition kind of syntax. First, let's see how we can do it by using this infinite loop plus break. So we want to repeatedly read the input from the user till the user enters a valid non-negative number for age. So how can we do it? We'll create an infinite loop by using while true, and what we will do inside the loop is first we'll try to read this age input, right? And as input function returns a string, we have to convert it to int because age is an integer, right? Now what is the breaking condition or exit condition in this case? When the user enters a valid number, which is a non-negative integer, that's when we want to break out of the while loop because we got a valid input. So simply we can write if age greater than or equal to 0, which means if the user provides a valid input, we are done, and so we'll break out of this while loop. Let's say the user enters a negative integer like -20. So what happens? This will be false, so it will not break. So it will continue. It will print age should not be negative and goes to the next iteration. So again, this prompt will be shown to the user to enter the age. So this process continues till the user enters a valid non-negative integer value. Now let's see how we can do the same thing by using this while condition kind of syntax. So what do we want to do? We want to continuously read the input as long as the user enters invalid negative integer. So what will be our condition? Age less than 0, right? So first we'll try to read the age by using user input and we'll convert it to int, the same process. Now here, as long as the age entered by the user is negative, we want to print age should not be negative, and we want to read the input again. Let's say initially user enters a value -10. So what happens when this condition is checked? This will be true because age is less than 0. So it will print age should not be negative, and it will ask the user to enter the input again. Now let's say the user enters -20, age will be -20. So again this condition will be true. So again it will print age should not be negative, and it will ask the user to enter the age again. Now let's say the user enters positive value, let's say 20. Now what happens? This condition will be false because age is not less than 0. So it will come out of the while loop. So this is how we can use while loops to perform input data validation. And as we have discussed in the previous video, we can use both these kind of syntaxes to implement while loops. You can choose whatever way seems more intuitive to you based on the problem statement. But in general, if complex logic is involved or if exit conditions depend upon user input, infinite loop plus break kind of syntax is preferred. We discussed about it in the previous lecture, right? But it's not a hard and fast rule. If you feel for a certain problem, while condition kind of syntax is more intuitive to you, you can go ahead with this as well. Always remember there could be multiple approaches to implement one solution, alright? Now let me run this code for you. First I am taking this infinite loop plus break kind of syntax. So let me run it. So it says enter age. So let me enter -10. Now what happens? Age is negative value, so this will not be true. So it will not break. So it will continue. It will print age should not be negative, and it will continue the next iteration where it will ask to enter age again, right? Now let's say I'll enter -20. It again does the same thing. It again asks to enter the input. Now let's say I enter 25. So 25 is not a negative integer, right? So what happens? Now age is 25. So this condition will be true. 25 greater than or equal to 0 will be true. So it will break out of the while loop and it will continue with the rest of the statements. So it will simply print age is 25. Let me press enter and show you. So as you see, it prints age is 25. And as we have seen, we can implement the same by using this while condition syntax as well. So let me first comment out the previous lines so that we can focus on this code. So let me run it again, right click, run. So it asks to enter age. Let's say I enter -10. Now what happens? So age will be -10. Now it will go here. Age less than 0 will be true. So it will go inside the while loop. So what happens? It will print age should not be negative and it will ask to enter the age again. So let me press enter. So it asks to enter the age again. Now let's say I enter -20. Again the same thing happens. Now if I enter 30, which is a non-negative integer, now what happens? Age will be 30. So when it checks this condition, 30 less than 0 will be false, right? So when the condition is false, it will exit the while loop and it will execute the next statements. So it will simply print age is 30. So let me press enter and show you. As you can see, it prints age is 30. All right. So till now in the previous examples, we have seen how break statement works. Now let's also understand continue statement. Firstly, what happens with break statement? Whenever Python executes the break statement, it will exit the while loop, right? It will come out of the while loop. Now what happens when continue statement is executed is Python skips the rest of the lines in the loop and jumps to the next iteration. Let's try to understand what this means by using this example. And in fact, this is a small extension of one of the problems we have seen in the previous lecture. Let me go back to it once. So if you remember from the previous lecture, we have discussed this problem where our program reads user inputs and adds the numbers entered by the user. So what does this while loop do? It will read all the integers entered by the user and sum them up, right? And when the user enters 0, that's when it will break out of the while loop, isn't it? Now what if we want to add an extra element here? Let's say the program should not add the negative integers entered by the user. Right now in this program, apart from 0, whatever integers are entered by the user, they will be added up, right? But let's say we don't want to add the negative integers. Then how can we solve it? So when you say we don't want to add the negative numbers, what we want to do is we don't want this line of code to be executed if the number is negative, right? Ultimately, that's what we want to happen programmatically, isn't it? So what we can do is we can add one extra condition here, which is if number less than 0, continue. So what does this mean? Let's say here the user enters a negative integer -5. So what happens? First it checks this condition. This will not be true because number is -5. So it goes here. Now number is less than 0. So it will simply continue, which means it will skip the rest of the lines in the loop and it will go to the next iteration. Now in the next iteration, again the condition will be checked. Condition is true. So it will get inside the loop and it will read the number again. Now if the number is 0, it will break out of the while loop. If the number is negative, it will simply continue without adding it to the total. And if none of these two happen, which means if the number is, let's say, a positive integer, then it will simply add that number to the total, right? So that's how we can use continue statement in real-time programs when we want to skip the rest of the lines in the loop in the current iteration. So what is the difference between break and continue? Break will exit the while loop. Continue will skip the rest of the lines in the loop and jumps to the next iteration. So this is the previous code where our program is reading the numbers entered by the user and adding all those numbers. So what change do we want to make here? We want to skip if the user enters negative integer, right? So we can simply add this condition. Let me run this program now. Right click, run, and it says enter an integer number. Let's say 10, press enter. So it continuously asks the user input. Now let's say I enter 20. Now let me enter -5 and press enter. So what happens with -5? It will simply skip, right? So this will not be executed. So this -5 will not be added to the total. Now let's say finally I press 0. What happens with 0? Number will be 0. So it will break out of the while loop. And it will print sum colon and whatever total we have. So let me press enter after 0. So sum is 30. If you see here, so the numbers we entered are 10, 20 and -5. If you add all of them, it will be 10 plus 20 minus 5, which is 25, but negative numbers are skipped, so it is not added. So the final sum is 10 plus 20, 30. Now logically speaking, what are we achieving in this code by using this continue statement? We are simply not adding the number if the number is less than 0. So is there any other way to implement the same thing without continue statement? We can do it actually. So let me take this code. So what we want to do here is we want to add the number to the total only if the number is greater than 0. And I can achieve that by using a simple if statement as well. What if I do if number greater than 0, then I'll add the number to the total. So even here we're achieving the same thing, right? If the number is less than 0, let's say user enters a negative integer, what happens? This condition will be false. Now it goes here, number greater than 0 will be false. So it will not execute this statement, right? So we're achieving the same thing. But one thing you need to understand is here we have only one skip condition. What if we have multiple skip conditions? Let's say we also want to skip the numbers which are multiples of 5. So what we can do, if number modulus 5 is 0, then we can say number is a multiple of 5. So then also we don't want to add the number to the total. So we can use continue statement. And not just that, let's say before executing the continue statement, we also want to do some task. Maybe, you want to simply print some message. Let's say here we want to print skipping negative number and then continue so that the user might clearly understand why that number is not added. Similarly, in case of multiples of 5, we want to print skipping multiple of 5, right? So it will be much easier for you to extend your program when you want to add multiple skip conditions at a later point of time. And also when someone reads the program, it is much easier to understand what is happening. If the number is negative, we are simply skipping. If the number is multiple of 5, we are simply skipping. So by using continue statements like this, it is much easier to achieve the isolation between different skip conditions. Because we are not only executing continue statement to skip, we are also doing something before skipping. Same is the case here. Now can't we achieve the same thing by using simple if else kind of statements? Of course we can, but it will be much more complicated and confusing. You might have to write a chain of if statements to achieve the same thing. But using continue statements will make it a lot easier to write the code and also a lot easier to understand what is happening in your code. And the reason why I try to take different scenarios is to help you develop the intuition to solve real-time problems, right? So it's not just about learning syntax, but you need to understand how to apply the concept in real-time programs and how to make different trade-offs, all right? Now here in this case, we are using this infinite loop plus break kind of syntax, but remember that we can use break and continue statements even in while condition kind of syntax as well. Let me comment this and take the code where we were using while condition kind of syntax. So this is the code we used before where we were summing up all the integers, right? Using while condition kind of syntax. So even here we can add break and continue statements. So basically what is the exit condition here? When number is equal to 0, that's when this condition will be false, right? Let's say we want to add an extra exit condition. Let's say if number is equal to 500, then also we want to break out of the loop. Then we can use this kind of break statement. And of course, instead of adding this if statement, we can simply add another condition here that while number not equal to 0 and number not equal to 500. We can achieve the same thing by using this as well. But I just wanted to show you how we can use break statements inside the while loop as well. All right. Here the condition is pretty simple, but there could be some complex conditions. Sometimes there could be some external event that could trigger to exit the loop. Maybe some information coming from database or something, right? So it will be much easier to add these kind of breaking conditions by using break statement. Now let's also add the condition to skip. Right? If number less than 0, we want to simply continue, which means to skip. Now there is one problem here. Take a moment to understand. Okay, now let me run this program and show you what the issue is. But let me also add one print statement here. All right. In case if user enters a negative number, we are simply printing skipping negative number and going to the next iteration, right? So let's see what happens. Let me run the program. So it asks to enter a number. Let's say I entered 10. Now let's say I enter -5. Now what happens? So number not equal to 0, it will be true. So it comes here. Number equal to 500, it will be false. So it comes here. Number less than 0, it is true because number is -5. So what happens? It prints skipping negative number and then it will continue, right? But what is the problem here? When it goes to the next iteration, the number is still -5. We are not updating the number here because in this kind of syntax, we are updating number value at the end of the while loop, right? So here when you're trying to skip, you're not updating the number and so number will stay as -5 forever, right? So in the next iteration, number value is -5. So -5 is not equal to 0, which will be true. So this condition will be false, so it will not break. So again, it will come here. Number less than 0 will again be true. So it will print skipping negative number and again will continue, which means it again goes to the next iteration. So this continues forever, which means it will get into an infinite loop. So let me press enter and show you. As you can see, it gets into an infinite loop. So how can we avoid this? Let's make the change. So what we need to do here is before executing the continue statement, we want to update the number, which means we want to take the new user input. Now what happens when the number is negative? It prints skipping negative number and it will ask for the next user input, right? Now let's say the user enters a positive integer. So it will simply add that to the total in the next iteration. So we need to be cautious about infinite loops when we use while statements. Now if I run the program again, so it asks to enter an integer number. Let's enter 10. Now if I enter -5, press enter. So it did not get into infinite loop. It simply says skipping negative number and it asks for the new user input, right? Now if I enter 20 and press enter. Now let's say I enter 0 and press enter. So when we enter 0, this condition will be false and so it will break out of the loop. And now if you see the sum, it is 10 plus 20, which is 30. Negative numbers are skipped, all right? But if you see this code, there is a lot of redundancy, right? So if you see the statements where we are reading the user inputs, we are writing it 3 times, right? Here we are writing, here again we are reading the input, and here also we have the statement to read the input, right? But instead, if we use infinite loop plus break kind of syntax, so this is the code we have written. Let me uncomment it. So as you can see, here there is no redundancy and also it's much easier to understand what is happening inside the loop. So that's the kind of flexibility infinite loop plus break kind of syntax offers, and so it is preferred when we have multiple exit or skip conditions, or when conditions depend upon user input, or when the logic is complex. I hope it made sense to you now. So that is all for this tutorial and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.